This is Nobody Cares. Well, as the title says, this is going to be about hashish. And hash goes back right to the very beginning for me, 50 years ago, early 70s. And it's always been just a little bit special. There's a mystique about hash. I guess just the history and how it ends up all the way over here in Canada and in my hands. But I'm not going to go on and on about that. I don't have too many stories about hash, but I have one. And now this story does not come secondhand. I know the principal that was involved here and was told this story directly. So this isn't a late night barroom story. This gal, and she was living in Vancouver, and she was in a relationship with a guy. And the time doesn't really matter here. This is quite a few decades ago now. And her mother lived on the island in Victoria. And they had planned to get together to have a mother-daughter weekend getaway. And what they decided to do was that, I better give this gal a name. This is not her real name. We'll call her Mary. And so Mary and her mother had decided to go to the States for a little getaway weekend. And so Mary was going to take the ferry from Vancouver over to the island, meet her mother there, and then there's another ferry that goes down to, well, I think it's Anacortes, something like that. I may have that wrong, but I think you end up in Seattle anyway when you do that. So they've got this all planned anyway. And so the guy that Mary was in a relationship with, living with at that time, was also doing a little bit of business. And there was also some of the Afghan gold seal, the commercial Afghan, around at that time. And so she's leaving on the ferry, and her partner asks her if she would take a kilo of hash with her on the ferry over to somebody who they both knew. Now, Mary knew this guy, and she had met him and would recognize him, and there wasn't going to be anything more to it than just a handoff. No dealing with cash, no BS, nothing else, just that. And so Mary said, "Oh, sure, I'll do that, no problem." So she takes this kilo of hash, puts it in her suitcase, gets on the ferry and goes across, takes a couple hours to get there. Gets to the other side, and this guy isn't there. He doesn't show up. Now, this is before cell phones, and so nothing's at this point is easy. She doesn't have much time. She has to go and meet her mother, and I forget now just how much time she did have, but it was very little. Now she's panicking, doesn't know what to do, can't do anything, and so she just keeps this kilo of hash in her suitcase and goes to meet her mother. So I don't know if she phoned back to the mainland and talked to her hubby or not, but anyway, so now what are you going to do? They got to catch this ferry over to Anacortes. Well, they do. She can't get out of this now. So she meets up with her mom, and they hop on this ferry and head over to Anacortes. And I don't know how long that ferry ride is. It doesn't matter. Anyway, now she doesn't know what she's going to do here. She's got this stupid kilo of hash. So what she decides is, before they dock on the other side and they have to go through customs over there, she goes in, she gets it out and stuffs it down the front of her jeans. And she had kind of a shirt on as well, not tucked in and hang down. And so that's what she does, and walks through customs, no problem. Get through there, and they on with their trip down to Seattle, get their room, and now she's more worried about her mother finding this kilo of hash, and so, but manages to keep it hidden from Mom for the 2 days. I think there were just 2 nights down there, one big day of shopping and 2 nights, and then you got to come back, right? So now it's time to go back. So same thing, get up to customs before they get on the ferry. Takes the kilo of hash, stuffs it down her jeans in the front, got the shirt on hanging down, walks through customs, declares whatever they'd bought. Before that, no problem, walk through customs. Just unbelievable. I mean, just I just shake my head. It just, just leaves me speechless. So hashish in Canada was most prevalent in the 70s, and not just prevalent, but most appreciated as well. And that was simply because of the poor quality of weed that was available. And, by the late 70s, when the Colombian showed up, that did change a little bit. And so I think the younger generations of smokers that came along were less interested in hash, and I think that's continued right up till today. And now, I can't really speak about now, but as the decades went on, it pretty much stayed that way. So when anything did show up in any quantity, it was basically the older generation that appreciated and were the customers. So I have quite a few one-off experiences with different kinds of hash, and so I'm going to go through those. The first one is with spaghetti sticks, and it's just one way that they were from Afghanistan. It's only just one way that they make hash over there, or did at that time. And it was a friend of mine who had purchased it, and he had a baggie and they were broken up in this bag, and so, but I have seen pictures of them since then, and they're, and from my memory as well, this fits, probably about the size of a pencil in diameter, maybe a little bit thicker than that, and the length of them, it's kind of hard to tell. And what I saw in his bag, what he had, they were all broken up, so he couldn't go by that. And it's difficult to tell from the picture as well, because there's no reference. They're just sitting there on a table or so. But anyway, we smoked some, and it was fantastic. It was really, really good. I hate to give it a star quality, because at that time I was such a novice smoker that I didn't really, everything was good, right? So, and certainly after that, and the rest of my life, lots of Afghan hash, but that was the only time I saw spaghetti sticks. Another one-off that I had was with Temple Ball, and they're quite revered throughout the world of hash. I don't think you could even get them now, and any of the real ones are going to end up in a very high-end market. Certainly never see it again on the street. But this was early in the 70s, and it too was fantastic quality, and this one I will give a 5-star rating to. It just doesn't get any better than that. For me to say that it was actually Royal Nepalese would be stretching it. I don't have any proof of that. I know the symbol for Royal Nepalese is an arrow, and with 4 diagonal bars across the shaft of the arrow. And that was not, we didn't have that on the piece that we bought, but it could have been on somewhere else on that ball. Certainly if I had the Temple Ball and was selling off, they're about 100 grams. And if I was selling off 3 ounces, 100 grams would be 3 ounces and 16 grams, a little bit more than a half ounce. And if I was going to had a Temple Ball and I was going to sell off 3 ounces and keep the rest for myself, I would keep the part that had the etching on it, that's for sure. And again, over the years, there would be Nepalese hash that would show up and be available, but not that often, really. It was actually quite rare. But the quality was always excellent. I don't know that I would give the more commercial Nepalese that 5-star rating. I don't think so. We'll go 4 stars for that one. When I was in Amsterdam in November of 1973, and this is just typical of things just happened to me. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And a lot happened to me in those 3 or 4 days that I spent in Amsterdam. But I saw, and I can't talk about this out of respect for others, I saw some Pakistani hash. It was the only time in my life that I saw Pakistani hash. Didn't even know that it existed, and have actually never even heard of it since then. And it was a 200-gram slab. I did get to hold it. It was there was none being smoked. This piece of hash was how shall I say it? It was in transition. It had not reached the end user yet, and odd that it would be a 200-gram slab. Had to have been produced that way because it would be almost impossible to cut a 200 piece off a bigger slab. To cut it off perfectly would be almost impossible. It was very, very fresh. It almost gave me the feeling like it had been pressed the day before and somehow got on the red eye to Amsterdam, and we were looking at it the next day. And I certainly have the feeling that the quality would have been right up at the top. The slab would have been thinner than, say, the commercial Afghan, and that's. Well, I'll just add here, like I talk about, Pakistani hash and not knowing about it. Well, I think that there's many of those countries over there, Iran, Iraq, certainly India for sure produce hash. They just don't produce it in enough quantities that it becomes commercially available anywhere else in the world. It's just not sold outside the borders of their country. It seems odd to me, actually, that I only saw red Lebanese once in my entire life in Canada or anywhere. And you would think that that wouldn't be so, and I can't speak about anywhere else in Canada. So, and also it was unique in that it was packaged in 500-gram packages, pressed in 500-gram packages. I did talk about this a little bit in a previous audio clip, and it's of course it's not lipstick red. It's kind of a rusty color, I think is the best way to describe it. And in my opinion, it's the same plant as the Moroccan hash is produced from. It has the same texture to it. It's basically the same quality. I would give it a very low rating, probably down like a 2 stars. So with that red leb, and any time that the Moroccan would show up, which really was pretty infrequent as well, it seemed it did take a long time for it to move and to get rid of it. But eventually, of course, it does. And I think the reason for that is that people were used to just better quality hash, and that it was a bit of a disappointment after smoking Afghan and some of these other varieties. So, and I have one more, and that was with some Turkish hash. And only one time, and we were told that this was Turkish hash, and it was wonderful. It was a very small amount. It wasn't around very long. And it had that deep brown, really pungent aroma, and it was fantastic. Easily gets my 5-star rating, and I don't like to throw that around too easily. But the interesting thing about it was, they take the powder off the plant and then they store it in airtight containers. Just a little bit that I know about it anyway, how hashish is made. And then when they're ready to press it, they have to heat it up, and they will sometimes add a little bit of water or even tea to it to make it more malleable and so it can be pressed. But with this Turkish hash, they had not gotten all the water out of it, and it had mold on it. And the mold wasn't very bad. It was just white spots here and there. And there's quite a few of them, though. And I can remember that we were wondering whether, and we recognized it as mold. And we were wondering whether it was the mold that made it so good or whether the mold was actually going to kill us. But anyway, nobody died. So there's something I meant to do earlier here, and I forgot all about it, and that was talk about how hashish is made. And the main way, the most popular way, is to take the mature plant and then dry it out completely until it's tinder dry. And you thresh it by beating it over top of a screen, and that will remove the hashish will come off the plant and fall through. And then it would, I think, have to go through one more, or probably more likely at least two more screens, increasingly fine screens, until you've gotten rid of all the little leaves and twigs and debris and whatever else may come off of the plant. And then it's stored in an airtight container until you're ready to press it. The other method, and this is what's used for making the temple balls, or the Royal Nepalese at least, and that's by hand rubbing the plant. And you simply massage the plant very gently, not the plant, the buds, with your hands, of course, and you will the hash will gradually come off of that bud and stick to your hand. And so it's very, very labor intensive, and a lot of hours. It would take a lot of pride and a lot of love, really, in what you're doing to do that. As it sticks to your hand, and apparently the hash, it's hard to get it to stick to your hand initially, but once you get a little hash on your hands, then it becomes easier. The hash will stick to the hash more easily than it does to your hand. And then as you go on, gradually you can start rubbing your hands together, take the hash and form a little ball, and then just continue on from there. The good news about doing it that way is you still have the plant, right? And the plant will continue to produce more hash to replace what's been taken off of it. Pictures that I've seen, it doesn't. I know I mentioned a 100-gram ball earlier, but I've seen pictures of balls of all different sizes. And I guess what I was referring to when I said that was I did see a picture one time of Royal Nepalese hash temple balls, and there was also loaves in that picture, and they were all approximately 100 grams. But they come in all sizes and shapes, so there's no reason why you can't use the first method just to collect the powder and then form that into balls, right? Just add a little water or tea, and then just until it becomes malleable. You have to heat it up a little bit, and then you could form a ball. And so that's what makes it so difficult to tell the Royal Nepalese from anything else. I guess the only real way would be by smoking it, and if you're a connoisseur and can recognize that those differences, then I don't know how else you would be able to tell. But I know that because the temple balls became so popular that the original method of hand rubbing it was quite often discarded, and the balls made simply by removing the powder first and then going from there. But easily the most recognizable, the most abundant hash in Canada my entire life has been the Afghan gold seal, and I call it the commercial Afghan, but the gold seal, and it's always the same in 1,000-gram weighed slabs, identical, and they always have a gold symbol on there of some kind, and that's changed over the years. My memory's not really great on this, but certainly the most recent that I saw was a crescent moon with some gold stars, and I do remember way back. It was like a lion, a caricature of a lion, perhaps a mythical lion, standing on its hind legs, pawing the air. I don't think they could use a stencil to do this because it would just get too mucky. It wouldn't last very long trying to spray a stencil. So it must be a rubber stamp of some kind. I don't really know. But this is the one that's produced by the multi-ton in Afghanistan. It's a big, big, big deal. I've read that there's fields of like 500 acres of, it's an indica plant that they use. And it'd be quite interesting to see the whole process. Like it's, this is a major undertaking. So, but like I say, it's pretty much the standard. I would put it that way in Canada. Everything else is kind of compared to that, and it's terrific. It never. It always delivers for quality and smokability, and there's something really quite mystical about hashish. When you think about where it's come from, its history, generations, centuries of it being made, and for it to, travel the distance that it has. First of all, how it's made by the farmers out in the backcountry, however, whatever, and then its journey across, all these borders and oceans and whatever, and for that to end up in your hands, it is a mystical experience, and for some people more than others. But even for me, not being a huge smoker, you would have those feelings. And for some, I know people that it's almost a religious experience. The reason I'm saying that, it's very true, is because of another one-off that I had, and I've saved this to the end. And it too was Afghan hash, and I was told it was Mazar-e Sharif, which is up in the northwestern part of Afghanistan. And it was not pressed the same way. It was they were a bit uneven. The weight wasn't necessarily going to be exactly 1,000 grams. They were close, but they were. I don't know how they did do it, because it sort of was a little bit lumpy and misshapen. But what really got my attention on this and caused this more mystical experience for me this time were the words that were written on it, on this slab. And it was done in red ink, and it was a bit faint on there, although not difficult to read what they were. Those 3 words were freedom for Afghanistan. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you asked the authorities or somebody like that, they'd say, "Oh, it's rebels, and it's they're using the money for terrorism and all this." Oh, fuck off! I no more believe that. There's dirt poor farmers, right, and barely eking out a living. So, but the words are rather haunting. At least they were to me. Like, what is this? Is this well, first of all, it's in English. So is this an advertisement? What's your message? What does freedom mean, really? What's freedom mean to you? Freedom from the Taliban, or freedom from Russia spent 10 years over there getting rid of some of their old ordnance and giving the boys a little real-time action. Freedom from the Americans and Canadians, we were over there doing pretty much the same thing. How good was your English when you thought that up? Did you think it was just a neat phrase, something nice to say, just a little advertisement for yourselves there? I know we all know Afghanistan has been something like 1,000 years. There's always been war and conflict going on there. Most of the country is controlled by warlords. They all have their territory, and those words were really haunting. I wanted to mention it. I don't really know what to say. You can think whatever you want about it, of course. And the hashish itself was superior quality, way better. I don't want to say way better, definitely better quality than the commercial Afghan. And remember I mentioned the Turkish hash. Well, it was more like that. It had that deeper, darker color to it, that brown, and just the pungent aroma of it. and it definitely gets the 5-star rating. If I could have a hashish wish, it would be just one more time in my life to hold in my hands a good-sized chunk, say an ounce, 30 grams, something like that, of that Mazari Sharif, that wonderful 5-star hashish, and just cup it in my hands and bend over and then bring that up to my nose and inhale that ancient, exotic, unmistakable, pungent, aromatic aroma. Just one more time.